sunny day here in Florida. The temperature is 75. It's quite pleasant, but I enjoy sitting here talking to my peeps. And I promised that on this session I would keep it a little bit more on the light side. Serious, but hopefully throw in a little touch of humor here and there. I'm talking about technology and how it impacts on us as we age. And what prompted me to think about what I was going to start with today was remembering that as a young boy, I don't know, 8 or 9, it was in the mid 40s, that my buddies and I would read Dick Tracy comic books. Dick Tracy had a wristwatch that he could call back to headquarters, and oh, that was so neat. But we looked at each other and shook our heads and said, that's pretty far-fetched. So then I thought maybe I would use the example of the telephone to start out today. Because I can remember that early on in my life, visiting my grandparents on their farm in Missouri, they had one of those old crank phones that I think theirs was like 3 shorts and a long, and that was their signal. When they heard that, they would pick it up and have a conversation. They would whirl it, and then the operator would answer and connect the call, and that was okay up to a point. But you see, that was a party line, and that stretched out to about 8 farms in a row. And anybody that was feeling a little bored and they heard the phone ring, even though it wasn't for them, they would pick up the phone and listen in. And after a while, the signal would get so bad that you couldn't hear, and somebody would start yelling, "Get off the phone! You're blocking our call!" Click, click. Nosy neighbors and phones. Maybe we can come back to that in a different session. But then I remember that we moved from party line, and then we were in our home in this small city in Iowa, and we had a rotary phone. And that was really neat. I can remember that I was taught to dial the phone, and then the operator would answer, and I'd say, Cherry Hill 5577. And I would be connected. Then the rotary phone became automated. So I didn't have to call and talk to the operator. I could just dial the number I wanted. Then along came the first of the mobile phones. I can remember a friend of mine in Toronto that was, he was going to have the first one. It was about the size of a walkie-talkie that we had in the Army back in the early 50s. It was like a brick, and he carried it in his car, and he was just... He would wait till somebody would pull up next to him at the stoplight and then pull his phone out and pretend he was talking so that they would see how important he was, that he had to carry this at all times. It wasn't long until I could carry a computer in my pocket. It was about the size, well, it's this size. That's my computer I carry in my pocket. I can still use it as a phone, and sometimes I do. But I also use it as a high-end photography photo camera. I can end all the arguments by simply searching and asking Senor Google what's the answer to the question, and win the debate hands down. So we've come a long way from Dick Tracy and his wristwatch radio, but also along the way, the people that used to answer the telephones at the switchboard, their job is gone. I had an uncle that worked at the central telephone, and they monitored all the calls and the switches that were going on, and no longer a job because computers do it. And I remember him telling me they could even tell when there was a really serious event, because suddenly all of the connectors in the central board of in the central phone station would start clattering like crazy. And he told me about what it was like to be working there the day that JFK was assassinated. He said that it just almost overloaded the system. But now you go into central switching and it's just a computer sitting there going, So we move on, because technology is going to push us whether we like it or not. And some of the major drivers of technology improvement have really come about as connected to either war or space exploration, where suddenly the need for communication could be, not only could be, but it was necessary to support the growing infrastructure around communication. I can remember my Aunt Betty sitting down and writing a letter to my Uncle Chuck, and it would go off in the V-mail. Weeks later, a letter might or might not come back. And information got transferred from one place to another very slowly on paper and by mail. Radio certainly improved communication and added to our growing sense of knowledge, because we could now hear world events happening. And I, just remember, I can close my eyes and hear Robert R. Murrow reporting on the skyline of London on fire because of all of the German bombs that were falling on the city. Then along came AM, FM, stereo radio, digital radio, and now live streaming radio. You don't even need who has a radio anymore? I just dial it up on my phone and listen to it through my Bluetooth headset. Television was a novelty back at the time of I think when the World's Fair was held in Queens, New York. I forget what year that was, but they were starting to demonstrate the advances in television, and I had some contact for about 5 years in a television studio and doing some news gathering, and it all seemed very high tech, and it still is to a larger degree, but the speed with which news gets transmitted to us as a result of technology seems like a good thing, and then it isn't. I think now what I want to try to use an example would be that today I have my choice of some news networks on cable if I were to use cable. And I know which network I want to watch for news because of my particular political stance. Unfortunately, that's the case these days. And then I remember back to the great newscasters that came out of the 50s and 60s and 70s that helped form important decisions around the civil rights movement, about our thinking about war in Vietnam and all those things like that. But the difference then was that Walter Cronkite and others, Cronkite, would come on the air and they didn't, Walter didn't tell us what to think. He didn't give us his opinion. He presented the facts as a reporter is supposed to do. And then that was the news. I stopped watching the news, except for little snippets here and there, when I saw a screen of 8 people all trying to talk at the same time. And I think they may even been trying to say the same thing, but they were all arguing about it as if it was different. And I looked at it, I scratched my head, I couldn't make sense of what they were saying because the storyline was getting buried well behind all of the yakety yaks. Sorry about that. That's what we old people do. We say yakety yak. Yeah, there you go. Now, we have instant news by streaming, by social media, and I'm left in today's news world without enough time to really comprehend it, and it creates a growing anxiety because there's nothing I can do about it. I watch a podcast by John Waldron. We have the same last name, but we're not related. And John talks about how to react to news. That, for example, what he says that if a natural disaster happens someplace, and instead of taking it all in and watching endless looping news stories for hours and hours and hours where nothing really new is said, except you see that sort of constant B-roll happening in the background, and it's all the same background. Only the talking heads are changing if they're changing their story. But what he's saying is that if it doesn't affect you directly, why watch it? Why take that in? Why let that fill your life with negativity? Check out I Got Rights. That's WRITES. John Waldron. I Got Rights is his channel, and he has some great things to say. And one of them is about how to handle the news. He does it very cleverly, and it's fun to watch. Okay, enough of John Waldron. Let's get back to Chuck Waldron. I think that I wanted to address the issue that technology plays in our lives. It's significant. As aging individual, we have to address challenges to health, mobility, social connection, independence, and that's where technology interacts with aging. Good news, bad news. The good news is that with healthcare and wellness, we can now connect to telemedicine. We can consult direct doctors remotely and reduce the need to travel. For a lot of us, it's not that easy to get in the car and get to where we want to go. We now have wearable devices and fitness trackers that monitor our heart rate and blood pressure and activity, medication management reminders, remote monitoring of care, of people that we're taking care of or are the people that are caring for us. It also provides social connection in video calls, and how many families are now learning that FaceTime with grandma. Oh yeah, let's call her, and let's include grandpa in that too, because he lives in Florida and we live in Pittsburgh, and let's give grandpa a call. Those are really good ways to take advantage of it. Then there are the voice assistance devices and large text, and many homes now are embracing smart home technology that allows control of air conditioning, everything from air conditioning to garage door open. Is the garage door open or closed? Let me see. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up. Is the garage door open or closed? I can check it. It's closed. I can go back to sleep. How about entertainment? We're bombarded with Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime, all those things. And for people that are struggling with language, it's even possible to talk to somebody in another country and use the almost immediate language translation services so that we can actually talk to each other without having that language as a barrier. It gets to be a bit of a struggle because one of the things that many people my age struggle to learn and adapt to new technologies, and sometimes that's funny. When my wife's mother was still alive, I very often got that early morning phone call. Chuck, I did something wrong and my computer's not working this morning. And I would go down and reset and look at it. It was usually, she'd wake up and look at something and hit a button that she wasn't comfortable with, and it was something that I enjoyed being able to help her with. It was a kind of a bonding event, but I still smile when I remember those phone calls. Hearing devices, glasses, all those, AI, robotics, advanced sensors. They're all there. And they're there for our benefit, and yet we back away because it's frustrating. I'm thinking of somebody I know who the first time something doesn't work on their phone or on their computer, or there's a problem, I can't fix it. I'll do something, I didn't fix it. And then finally slam the phone down and walk away because we're not going to make this work. It's that frustration with not knowing what to do. It's not, it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has a lot to do with embracing technology as best we can. I am going to go back to an early story from 1983 to finish out this session today. I was working in Toronto. I get into details, but I was director of a foundation, and one of the board members came in, and he placed a desktop computer in front of me, and he said, my company decided that desktop computing was going to be a passing fad. They still needed to rely on those big, huge mainframe computers that took up several rooms. And he said it was the dumbest decision that he ever thought that they could ever make. And he was true, because laptop computers, or desktop computers with the old paper drives, and then the harder drives, and then the flash drives, and then all of a sudden the laptops came along that could do all of the work on a smaller environment, and then our phones have the smallest footprint of all. So he was right. That was the way technology was heading. But the reason I'm telling you this is that I still remember him. He turned it on, and as he was telling me this story about their company decision, it was almost like a comic book character that you could see the steam coming out of his eyes. He was that angry, and he said, "Start using this. If you break it, I'll fix it." He says, "It's not a problem." He said, "Just do it." He says, "Kick the tires, go with it." And those were some of the best words I've had in my life as guidance towards embracing technology in the future, because I couldn't break I could screw it up and I could call him, and in 2 minutes I could have it reset. And until I learned how to do all the resetting myself. But the point I'm making is that the learning curve went along like this for about maybe a month, 2 months, and then it went like a rocket ship. And I was starting to learn how to do documents, printing out letters, spreadsheets, and that was a time when you had to go to the library to take a class to learn how to put in the codes for spreadsheets. Now, with drag and drop, everything happens so easily. But I look back and I thank Rich for all the things that he taught me about working with the computer, about working with the laptop, and embracing technology. Because I came from a demographic, like I have said in my opening paragraph, 87 years old. The people around me, a lot of them have not had that opportunity and continue to be overly frustrated with technology. I don't scoff at them. I'm just glad that I had a way to get introduced to it at a point where I would have a lifelong relationship with technology and be able to turn my typing 100 words a minute into becoming a writer. Darn good technology for me. So how do you see technology influencing you as you age? And best of all, there are some really great programs in the community now to help those of us of a certain age to learn how to use computers and programs and telephones and cell phones and all the technology. So grab a hold of that, embrace it. It can be fun, and it can be frustrating too. I talked about the person that slammed their phone down. I have, from time to time, experienced that feeling. The only thing I have is the tenacity of a pit bull when it comes to trying to solve a technology program. And what makes that surprising is that I only have that patience in that one part of my life. The rest of my life is chaos. It's been interesting thinking about technology and aging. So this went a little longer than I expected, but let me know. If you turned out early, I don't blame you because this is a long session. But if you stuck with me to the end, put a comment down there and let me know what you thought and whether you have some strong feelings about this one way or the other.